When it comes to the creation of stealth weapons, the United States has always been leading at that. Out of curiosity, if you have ever asked yourself if the United States have always been at the forefront of technological advancement, the simple answer is yes. Involved in the creation of weapons for over a decade now, the United States Air Force has shown unrivaled skill and mastery in the development of quality and stealthy weapons. What does it mean for an aircraft to be stealth? Does the United States have a weapon with this feature? Join us as we take you through how stealth technology actually works. In modern warfare, the need for a stealth weapon that can go undetected by radars and not be intercepted has increased. As the world continues to evolve, the world of weaponry is undergoing sporadic changes as well, and nations are getting increasingly skilled at developing sophisticated weapons of warfare. Stealth technology, also termed as low observable technology, is a military tactics and electronic countermeasures which makes use of several methods to make an aircraft, ships, submarines, missiles, and weapons to be less visible to radar, infrared, and other detection methods. This way, weapons can infiltrate the enemy's defenses without being spotted. The development of modern stealth technologies began in the United States in the year 1958 after they attempted to prevent the Soviet Union radar from detecting its U-2 spy aircraft was unsuccessful. To achieve their objectives, weapon developers started shaping the aircraft in a particular way that they thought would reduce the detection by redirecting electromagnetic radiation waves from radars. Radiation-absorbent materials were also tested and made to reduce the signals from radar that reflects on the surface of the aircraft. These changes to the shape and the materials used in the building of the aircraft helped to increase the invisibility of any air duct, and the stealth technology is currently being used in the Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit stealth bomber and the F-117 Nighthawk. The concept of having stealth technology is to have the ability to operate while the enemies would have no indication of the fact that they have an enemy in their territory. The concept was first explored through the use of camouflage to make the aircraft blend with the environment. A modern stealth weapon is designed from the outset to have a chosen spectral signature. The degree of stealth that is included in a given design is based on the projected threat if the aircraft eventually gets detected. One of the best examples of a perfectly stealth fighter jet is the F-117 fighter jet. Now let's take a look at its design and how it has achieved the state of being undetected. Despite the United States Air Force's best attempts to keep the existence of this fighter jet a secret, the public interest in the fighter only increased since its first confidential flight in 1981, reaching a fever pitch upon the plane's formal introduction to the public in 1988. This fighter jet is a single-seated subsonic twin-engine stealth fighter that was developed by Lockheed Martin's Secretive Skunk Works division and is also operated by the United States Air Force. It was the first time a fighter jet would be designed with stealth technology. For an aircraft to possess true stealth capabilities, it would have to let go of most of its aerodynamic stability and features. In 1964, the Soviet mathematician Pyotr Umfintsev published his seminal work, Method of Edge Waves in the Physical Theory of Diffraction, where he shared about how radar technology worked. He stated that the major determining factor for whether an object could be hidden from radar was the configuration of its edges, not its size. This information caught the attention of aircraft manufacturers around the world, and the United States government saw a growing need for fighter aircraft that could avoid radar detection. After a decade-long absence from the fighter aircraft industry, Lockheed's Skunk Works division took on the challenge. Thus began its top-secret project. After reading Huffensville's paper concerning how to achieve stealth in a weapon, Lockheed analyst Dennis Overholzer approached Dick Shearer, the project's preliminary designer, with a simple proposal for the design. For an aircraft to effectively avoid the enemy radar and become invisible, it should be made out of flat, angular surfaces that reflect radar waves off its body. This was bolstered by the use of radar-absorbing ion ball paints that were magnetically charged to reduce radar returns. The plane's exhaust ports were also narrowed as much as possible to minimize infrared detection. The development of the F-117 project started in the 1970s as a means of building defense against the Soviet surface-to-air missile in 1976. The first production of this fighter jet was delivered in 1982, and its initial operating capability was delivered in 1982. It performed its first maiden flight during the 1981 at Groom Lake, Nevada. Eventually, the first production of the fighter jet was delivered in 1982, while its initial operating capabilities was achieved in October 1983. In terms of stealth, the fighter has a radar cross-section of about 0.001. Amongst the limitations for being stealth are lower engine thrust due to losses in the inlet and outlet, a very low wing aspect ratio, and a high sweep angle about 50 degrees needed to deflect incoming radar waves to the sides. With these design considerations and no afterburner, the F-117 is limited to subsonic speeds. Additionally, to maintain its low detection abilities, the fighter jet was not equipped with radar, because not only would an active radar be detectable through its emissions, but an inactive radar antenna would also act as a reflector of radar energy. Whether it carries any radar detection equipment remains classified as of 2008. Its shape, which was made from two-dimensional flat surfaces, led to the limitations of the 1970s-era computer technology used to calculate its RCS. Later supercomputers made it possible for other aircraft to use curved surfaces while maintaining stealth through the use of far more computational resources to perform the additional calculations. The radar-absorbent flat sheets covering the F-117 weighed almost 1 ton and were held in place by glue, with the gaps between the sheets filled with a kind of putty material called butter. The fighter's exhaust plume contributed to its infrared signature. It reduces infrared signature with a non-circular tailpipe used to reduce the exhaust cross-section and maximize the mixing of hot exhaust with cool ambient air. It also lacks afterburners because the hot exhaust would increase the infrared signature, and breaking the sound barrier would produce an obvious sonic boom, as well as surface heating of the aircraft skin, which also increases the infrared footprint. As a result, its performance in air combat maneuvering required in a dogfight would never match that of a dedicated fighter aircraft. This was unimportant in the case of the jet, since it was a dedicated attack aircraft. The aircraft is equipped with sophisticated navigation and attack systems integrated into a digital avionics suite. It navigates primarily by GPS and high-accuracy inertial navigation. Missions are coordinated by an automated planning system that can automatically perform all aspects of an attack mission, including weapons release. Targets are acquired by a thermal imaging infrared system paired with a laser rangefinder laser designator that finds the range and designates targets for laser-guided bombs. The F-117's split internal bay can carry 5,000 pounds of ordnance. Typical weapons are a pair of GBU-10, GBU-12, or GBU-27 laser-guided bombs, 2 BLU-109 penetration bombs, or 2 Joint Direct Attack Munitions GPS-INS guided standoff bombs. But with all of its stealth flying, the fighter was challenging, to say the least. Reportedly, one of the Nighthawk's first test pilots hesitated at the plane's design upon seeing it in person for the first time, and test pilots referred to the planes as wobbly goblins. Although the plane could fly, it did so with great difficulty. Due to its relatively slow and difficult-to-handle nature, the Nighthawk was mostly utilized as a bomber. Thankfully, not all of the Nighthawk's stealth features came at the cost of its performance. The aircraft was covered in radar-absorbent sheets that weighed nearly 1 ton each. They were held in place by glue, with gaps between the sheets filled in by a putty colloquially named butter. Despite its limitations in flight, the Nighthawk's stealth capabilities forever changed the way the United States fought its wars. Its presence in war zones would quickly come to represent the country's unique capability to outgun its opponents on the field before they even realized it. Perhaps best known for its deployment during the Gulf War in 1991, the Nighthawk was responsible for direct hits on 600 high-value targets. Another jet that came close to being perfectly stealth was the B-2 Spirit. This fighter, also known as the stealth bomber, is a United States heavy strategic bomber that features stealth technology. It is designed to penetrate nations' defense systems without being detected. This aircraft was developed by Northrop Grumman and produced from 1987 to 2000. Northrop designed the bomber with the ability to drop conventional and thermonuclear weapons. This bomber has stealth characteristics that makes it penetrate even the most advanced anti-aircraft defenses without being detected and to attack heavily defended targets. The B-2 owes its stealth abilities to a combination of reduced acoustic, infrared, visual, and radar signatures to evade detection systems that might detect and direct attacks towards an aircraft. Its stealth capabilities enable the reduction of supporting aircraft that are required to provide air cover. Also, it is notable that no missiles have been launched at this bomber as of September 2013. To reduce optical visibility during daylight flights, the B-2 is painted in an anti-reflective paint. The undersides are dark because it flies at high altitudes, and at that altitude, a dark gray painting blends well into the sky. It is speculated to have an upward-facing light sensor, which alerts the pilot to increase or reduce altitude to match the changing illuminance of the sky. The original design had tanks for a contrail-inhibiting chemical, but this was replaced in production aircraft by a contrail sensor that alerts the crew when they should change altitude. The bomber is vulnerable to visual interception at ranges of 20 nautical miles or less. It is stored in a $5 million specialized air-conditioned hangar to maintain its stealth coating. Every 7 years, this coating is carefully washed away with crystallized wheat starch so that the B-2 surfaces can be inspected for any dents or scratches. Also, the B-2 bomber is designed to be hard to spot on radar, with a small radar cross-section. Pilots use a secret maneuver called stealth up near air defenses. While it's usually stealthy, there's a brief moment when the bomb bay opens. The plane's shape, like an infinite flat plate, helps make it stealthy by minimizing angles that could reflect radar waves. Unlike planes with vertical surfaces, the B-2 has less radar visibility from the sides. However, certain radars operating at lower frequencies might still detect it due to its design features. Radar cross-section reduction as a result of shape had already been observed on the F-117 Nighthawk. The F-117 used flat surfaces for controlling radar returns as during its development. In the early 1970s, technology only allowed for the simulation of radar reflections on simple, flat surfaces. Computing advances in the 1980s made it possible to simulate radar returns on more complex curved surfaces. The B-2 has many curved and rounded surfaces across its exposed airframe to deflect radar beams. This technique, which is known as continuous curvature, was made possible by advances in computational fluid dynamics and first tested on the Northrop Tacit Blue. According to the Huygens-Fresnel principle, even a flat plate would reflect radar waves, but it would be less than when a signal is bouncing at a right angle. Developers achieved an additional reduction in its radar signature by using various radar-absorbent materials to absorb and neutralize radar beams. The majority of the B-2 is made out of a carbon graphite composite material that is stronger than steel, lighter than aluminium, and absorbs a significant amount of radar energy. Similar to all other stealth aircraft, the B-2 is designed with extremely tight engineering tolerances to avoid it from leaking because it could increase its radar signature. Innovations like alternate high-frequency material and automated material application methods were used to improve the aircraft's radar-absorbent properties and reduce maintenance requirements. In early 2004, Northrop Grumman began applying a newly developed AHFM to the B-2s. To protect the operational integrity of its sophisticated radar-absorbent material and coatings, each B-2 is kept inside a climate-controlled hangar large enough to accommodate its 172-foot wingspan. B-2s are supported by portable, environmentally controlled hangars that are called B-2 shelter systems. The hangars are built by American Spaceframe Fabricators, Inc., and cost approximately $5 million per piece. The need for specialized hangars arose in 1996 when it was found that the bomber passing through Andersen Air Force Base did not have the climate-controlled environment maintenance operations required. In 2003, the B-2SS program was managed by the Combat Support System Program Office at Eglin Air Force Base. Their hangars are known to have been deployed to Naval Support Facility Diego Garcia and RAF Fairford. In the foreseeable Cold War scenario, the B-2 was to perform deep-penetrating nuclear strike missions by making use of its stealthy capabilities to avoid detection and interception throughout the missions. There are 2 internal bomb bays in which munitions are stored either on a rotary launcher or 2 bomb racks. The carriage of the weapons loadouts internally results in less radar visibility than external mounting of munitions. The B-2 has the ability to carry 40,000 pounds of ordnance. Nuclear ordnance includes the B-61 and B-83 nuclear bombs. The AGM-129 ACM cruise missile was also intended for use on the B-2 platform. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, it was decided to equip the B-2 for conventional precision attacks, as well as for the strategic role of nuclear strike. It features a sophisticated GPS-aided targeting system that uses the aircraft's APQ-181 synthetic aperture radar to map out targets prior to the deployment of GPS-aided bombs, later superseded by the Joint Direct Attack munition. In the B-2's original configuration, up to 16 JAMs or JDAMs could be deployed. An upgrade program in 2004 raised the maximum carrier capacity to 80 JDAMs. Back to the Nighthawk in 1999, it was shot down by a Soviet-era S-125, an obsolete anti-air missile system. Colonel Zoltan Dany and the 250th Air Missile Defense Brigade utilized a low-bandwidth radar to cue the activation of a higher bandwidth at a time when the F-117 would be visible to it. He also employed a number of people to visually look for the plane, which was not invisible to the naked eye. With this technique, the seemingly untouchable aircraft was successfully shot down, the only one ever lost in combat. While the pilot ejected and was successfully rescued, the plane fell to the ground almost intact, allowing the Russian and Chinese to get their hands on it. This failure of this fighter at the war front led the United States Air Force to believe that the Nighthawk's fighting advantages did not come close to outweigh its shortcomings as an aircraft. The world's first stealth fighter would see its last few deployments in 2001's Operation Enduring Freedom and 2003's Operation Iraqi Freedom. It was formally retired in 2008, with a commencement ceremony taking place to pay tribute to its over 20 years of service. All of the aircraft were retired into a form of flyable storage and kept in near working conditions. The development of advanced defense missile systems would lead to the undoing of most of these stealth fighters. Iron Dome is an Israeli all-air defense system that can work effectively in all weathers. This defense system was developed by Rafael Advanced Defense Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries. The system is designed to intercept and destroy short-range rockets and artillery shells fired from distances of 4 to 70 kilometers away, and whose trajectory would take them to an Israeli-populated area. From 2011 to 2021, the United States contributed a total of $1.6 billion to the Iron Dome defense system, with another $1 billion approved by the U.S. Congress in 2022. Iron Dome was declared operational and was initially deployed on 27th of March, 2011 near Beersheba. On 7 April 2011, the system successfully intercepted a rocket launched from Gaza for the first time and burned it to the ground. The Iron Dome system began operating in the early 2011, initially deployed at Air Force bases in southern Israel. It was designated to be set up in other areas, such as the town of Sderot, during significant conflicts along the Gaza border. On 10 March 2012, the Jerusalem Post reported that the Iron Dome system shot down 90% of the missiles that were launched from Gaza and would have landed in populated areas. In late 2012, Israel said that it hoped to increase the range of Iron Dome's interceptions from a maximum of 70 to 250 kilometers and make it more versatile so that it could intercept missiles that are coming from separate directions simultaneously. The creation of this sophisticated missile that can detect any aircraft, regardless of its design, has led to developers devising new ways to keep their weapons undetectable. Definitely, any fighter that Lockheed later produces would definitely make use of guided ballistic systems and would feature computer-aided designs that would deflect radar without sacrificing aerodynamics. And it would be less susceptible to the insane Iron Dome technology. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there. Have you ever wondered where weapon companies get their unrealistic ideas from? Or the motivation behind some of the finest stealthy innovations with features that are way out of this world? Your curiosity has been rightly piqued. This experience, which is both exhilarating and chilling, have birthed a technological marvel, a jet with features beyond what the human mind can conjure. What is this remarkable technology all about? How did scientists come about the information utilized in this invention? Join us as we look into the insane capabilities of the new UFO aircraft that the Pentagon just announced. When it comes down to the issue of conspiracy theories and the existence of extraterrestrial beings, the government and organizations in higher positions of power have made it their #1 duty to dismiss and debunk these claims. Yet there are facts that keeps pointing out their existence. But this is not about what is and what is not. All across the globe, there has been increased sighting of unknown flying objects, and this occurrence is even more often than before, and now even the Pentagon has reported mysterious objects in the sky. While some of these occurrences can be explained by military testing of experimental aircraft that are not even made to go public, there are some occurrences that no one can explain and are not linked to any form of experimental testing. The TR-3B, also known as Black Manta, is a classified military aircraft that may be responsible for a number of Black Triangle unknown flying object report. There have been several reports of people seeing it in places like Antelope Valley, an area of desert in Southern California, and the people in the area described it as a triangular flying object with an engine that excludes a powerful magnetic field, with light periodically being emitted by the engine. This unknown flying object is said to be a speculative surveillance aircraft that is said to be a project by the United States Air Force and is being developed under a black project. Reports have claimed that it is a subsonic stealth spy aircraft with a flying wing design. It was alleged to have been used during the Gulf War to provide laser designation for the Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk. The Lockheed F-117 is a single-seated subsonic twin-engine and stealth fighter jet that was developed by Lockheed's Secretive Skunk Works division and is operated by the United States Air Force. It was the first operational aircraft to be designed with stealth technology. To minimize its infrared signature, it has a non-circular tailpipe that mixes hot exhaust with cool ambient air and lacks afterburners. It is also restricted to subsonic speeds, as breaking the sound barrier would produce an obvious sonic boom that would increase both its acoustic and infrared footprints. While its performance in air combat maneuvering was less than that of most contemporary fighters, it was strictly an attack aircraft, despite being commonly referred to as the stealth fighter. Back to the Black Manta, there is little to no evidence to support the TR-3's existence. However, it is possible that the Black Triangle UFO that has been reported to be sighted is associated with this secret aircraft. Another suspected UFO is the Aurora, also called Astra. The Aurora is a rumored mid-1980s American reconnaissance aircraft. There is no substantial evidence that it was ever built or flown, and it has been termed a myth because it has not been proven to exist. In the late 1999, a series of unusual sonic booms was noticed in Southern California and was recorded by United States Geological Survey sensors across Southern California that is used to identify earthquake epicenters. The sonic booms had the characteristic of a smaller vehicle instead of the 37-meter-long Space Shuttle orbiter. Also, neither the Space Shuttle nor NASA's SR-71B was operating on the days the booms were observed. In the article In Plain Sight, which was published in the Washington City paper on the 3rd of July 1992, one of the seismologists, Jim Morey, stated that while they could not reveal anything concerning the vehicle, the booms seemed stronger than other sonic booms that they had recorded in a very long time. In addition to this, the former NASA sonic boom expert, Dom Maglieri, took his time to study the 15-year-old sonic boom data from the California Institute of Technology, and has deemed that the data showed something at 90,000 feet Mach 4 to Mach 5.2. He also said the booms were nothing compared to those from aircraft that had traveled through the atmosphere many miles away at Los Angeles International Airport. Rather, they appeared to be booms from a high-altitude aircraft directly above the ground, moving at high speeds. The boom signatures of the two different aircraft patterns are wildly different. There was nothing particular to tie these events to any aircraft, but they served to increase the number of stories about the aurora. The observers believed that the United States had the technological capability to build a Mach 5 replacement for the aging Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, and after a detailed examination of the United States defense budget, claimed to have found money missing or channeled into a number of black projects. By the mid-1990s, there were reports concerning the sightings of unidentified aircraft flying over California and the United Kingdom, involving odd-shaped contrails, sonic booms, and related phenomena that suggested the U.S. had developed such an aircraft. Nothing ever linked any of these observations to any program or aircraft type, but the name Aurora was often tagged on these as a way of explaining the observations. In late August 1989, while working as an engineer on the jack-up barge GSF Galveston Key in the North Sea, Chris Gibson saw an unfamiliar isosceles triangle-shaped Delta aircraft, apparently refueling from a Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker and accompanied by a pair of F-111 fighter bombers. Gibson watched the aircraft for several minutes until they went out of sight. The United States government has consistently denied such an aircraft was ever built, just like it denied the Black Manta. Aviation and Space states that there is very little evidence to support the existence of this UFO, and even the little information Aurora is circumstantial or pure conjecture, and there is little reason to think the government is not being truthful about its claim. Former Skunk Works director Ben Rich confirmed that Aurora was a myth in Skunk Works, as in 1994, a book detailing his days as the director. Rich wrote that a colonel working in the Pentagon arbitrarily assigned the name Aurora to the funding for the B-2 bomber design competition, and somehow the name was leaked to the media. In 2006, a veteran black project watcher and aviation writer mentioned that the Aurora is most likely still in development, but none of these claims have been confirmed, and the existence of Aurora is still under investigation. If the UFO really exists, then the United States Air Force is doing a good job at keeping it a secret. By 1996, reports associated with the Aurora name dropped off in frequency, suggesting to people who believed that the aircraft really existed, but that it had only ever been a prototype or that it had had a short service life. In 2000, Aberdeen Press and journal writer Nick Outerside wrote something on the United States stealth technology in Scotland. Citing confidential sources, he alleged RAF USAF Machrihanish in Kintyre, Argyll, to be a base for Aurora aircraft. Machrihanich's almost 2-mile-long runway makes it suitable for high-altitude and experimental aircraft, with the fenced-off coastal approach making it ideal for takeoffs and landings to be made well away from the eyes or cameras of the press and public. Oceanic Air Traffic Control at Prestwick, Outerside says, also tracked fast-moving radar blips. It was claimed by a staff that a hypersonic jet was the only rational conclusion for the readings. Now there was an occurrence in the past that highlights the possibility of UFO's history, and it involves the enigmatic fighter jet, the MiG-25. In November 1971, 2 Israeli fighter jets were on a race to intercept an unidentified flying object. Despite flying the F-4 Phantom, one of the fastest jets in the world, they still could not beat this unknown aircraft, which is now identified as the MiG-25 in terms of speed because the aircraft was extremely fast and could fly really high. It can outrun any fighter or air defense system. Even after a decade of it being developed, the Soviet Union's MiG-25 remains an enigma because nothing like it has never been seen before, and questions like how they came about the specifications of this technology kept being asked. But after the Cold War, a new kind of weapon was developed, an intercontinental bomber that was one of a kind. This aircraft had enough range to fly to any part of the world to deliver a nuclear strike. This United States has the ability to fly higher and faster than any other bomber that was developed before it. Its extreme speed made it really hard to intercept, and after this innovation, the United States grew increasingly better. In response to the increasing innovation of the United States, the Soviet Union started building capable fighter interceptors as an attempt to stop them. But by the late 1950s, the Soviet intelligence already learned that the United States were developing a new advanced bomber that had the ability to fly at extremely high altitudes and at very fast. This would render the entire Soviet Union's fleet obsolete. The United States did not plan to relent. In fact, it went ahead to begin the development of the XB-70. It would have been extremely difficult to build a fighter jet of such magnitude and might in the past, but it was a proof of how the world of warfare has evolved, and the United States Air Force wanted to get the bomber ready in just a few short years. Were they able to achieve such feat? Yes, they were. As the largest country in the world, there were over 22 million square kilometers of airspace to guard. At any moment, American bombers could emerge from the north, or from bases in the east, or NATO-allied countries in the west, and only a handful of supersonic bombers would be enough to overwhelm air defenses. The Soviet Union would have just a few short years to design and build a new interceptor to match the incredible performance of the upcoming B-70. Let us take a look at the features of the XB-70. This fighter jet, also known as Valkyrie, is a prototype version of the planned B-70 nuclear-armed, deep-penetration supersonic strategic bomber for the United States Air Force Strategic Air Command. Designed in the late 1950s by North American Aviation to replace the aging B-52 Stratofortress and B-58 Hustle, the six-engined delta-winged Valkyrie could cruise for thousands of miles at Mach +3 while flying at 70,000 feet. At these speeds, it was expected that the B-70 would be immune to interceptor aircraft, the only effective weapon against bomber aircraft at the time. The bomber would spend only a brief time over a particular radar station, flying out of its range before the controllers could position their fighters in a suitable location for an interception. Its high speed made the aircraft difficult to see on radar displays, and its high altitude and high speed capabilities could not be matched by any contemporaneous Soviet interceptor or fighter aircraft. The introduction of the first Soviet surface-to-air missiles in the late 1950s put the near invulnerability of the B-70s in doubt. In response, the Air Force began flying its missions at low level, where the missile radar's line of sight was limited by terrain. In this low-level penetration role, the B-70 offered little additional performance over the B-52 it was meant to replace, while being far more expensive with a shorter range. Alternative missions were proposed, but these were of limited scope. With the advent of intercontinental ballistic missiles during the late 1950s, crude nuclear bombers were increasingly seen as obsolete. Any weapon they create would have to be as fast as Soviet ingenuity could make it and developed in record time. But to effectively guard the country's airspace, they'd also need to mass-produce the new jet by the hundreds. The MiG-25 was the Soviet Union's answer, an interceptor that would overcome the odds with brute force. To catch the XB-70, engineers would need to equip the MiG-25 with enormously powerful engines. But there wouldn't be time to develop new ones. To intercept the XB-70, the MiG-25 would have to withstand serious kinetic heating while speeding, with some parts reaching 300 Celsius. but lightweight heat-resistant titanium was just too difficult to produce on a mass scale. So engineers built the jet largely out of heavy nickel-steel alloy, a material that could be quickly welded together and easily repaired at even the most remote and ill-equipped airbase. Because of the thermal stresses incurred in flight above Mach 2, the Mikoyan-Gurevich OKB had difficulties choosing what materials to use for the MiG aircraft. They had to use E2 heat-resistant plexiglass for the canopy and high-strength stainless steel for the wings and fuselage. Using titanium rather than steel would have been ideal, but it was expensive and difficult to work with. The problem of cracks in welded titanium structures with thin walls could not be solved, so the heavier nickel steel was used instead. It cost far less than titanium and allowed for welding along with heat-resistant seals. The MiG-25 was constructed from 80% nickel steel alloy, 11% aluminium, and 9% titanium. The steel components were formed by a combination of spot welding, automatic machine welding, and hand arc welding methods. Initially, the interceptor version was equipped with the TL-23 Smerch-A radar, a development of the system carried by the earlier Tu-128. While powerful and thus long-ranged and resistant to jamming, the system, due to the age of its design and its intended purpose, lacked look-down/shoot-down capability, which limited its effectiveness against low-flying targets. This is one of the reasons why it was replaced with the Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-31, whose Zaslon radar has that capability. By the time the MiG-25 entered service in 1969, this was a serious shortcoming, as strategic bombing doctrine was shifting towards low-level penetration of enemy territory. As an interceptor, typical armament includes 4 R-40 long-range air-to-air missiles, each fitted with either an infrared seeker or a semi-active radar homing seeker, and a maximum range of 30 feet to 60 kilometers against a high-flying target on a collision course. A fuel tank could be suspended under the fuselage. The aircraft could carry unguided gravity bombs to fulfill a rudimentary strike role by using a delivery system developed for nuclear weapons. As the bombs would weigh no more and incur no more drag than its regular load of R-40 missiles, its performance was not impaired, leading to some impressive bombing feats. When released at an altitude of 20,000 meters and a speed above Mach 2, a 500-kilogram bomb would have a range of several tens of kilometers. The MiG-25 was theoretically capable of a maximum speed exceeding Mach 3 and a ceiling of 27 kilometers. Its high speed was problematic, although sufficient thrust was available to reach Mach 3.2. A limit of Mach 2.83 had to be imposed as the engines tended to overspeed and overheat at higher air speeds, possibly damaging them beyond repair. The design cruising speed is Mach 2.35 with partial afterburner in operation. The maximum speed of Mach 2.83 is allowed to maintain no more than 5 minutes due to the danger of overheating of the airframe and fuel in the tanks. When the airframe temperature reaches 290 degrees centigrade, the warning lamp lights up and the pilot must reduce airspeed. The use of a partial afterburner and a cruising flight altitude of 19,000 to 21,000 meters makes it possible to have a range of only 230 km less than when flying Mach 0.9 at altitudes 9,000 to 10,000 meters. The maximum altitude of flight without an afterburner in operation is 12,000 meters. The poor fuel consumption in the subsonic regime, and hence range, is due to the engines having extremely low pressure ratio of just 4.75 at subsonic speeds. The specific fuel consumption of the engines is 1.12 in cruise and 2.45 pounds with afterburners. For comparison purposes, this is 50% worse in cruise than the first generation of F-100 engines from the F-15 Eagle. But the SFC with afterburners is actually nearly equal, despite the F-100 being a far newer engine design. But it meant the more than 40,000-pound jet could never be maneuverable, a characteristic considered irrelevant for its mission. To spot enemy bombers, The MiG-25 was equipped with a colossal 600-kilowatt radar designed to detect high-flying aircraft up to 100 kilometers away and burn right through their jamming devices. And it would only need one kind of weapon. 4 of the largest air-to-air missiles ever produced. Along with the interceptor, there would also be a dedicated reconnaissance version with powerful surveillance cameras, increased range, and an even higher service ceiling. Some versions could even be equipped for high-altitude bombing, but the vast majority of MiG-25s would be built as dedicated interceptors. Mass production began in 1969, and at one point, 100 MiG-25 were rolling off assembly lines every single month. The MiG-25 would fly higher and faster than any combat jet in history. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.